Good afternoon. It is Monday, August 5, 2009, 3:31 p.m. This is the time for the Transportation Commission. I will call the roll. Ballard is here. David McKinney.
Here.
Ryan Lancaster's on vacation. Ryan Hall. Here. Tracy Hopkins.
Here.
Stephen Lewis.
Here.
Ryan Leslie. We'll put him absent for now. Tom Leclerc. Here. Michael Venard. Absent. Luke Kavanagh. Absent. Sean Martin. Absent. Tony Tisdale.
Here.
Ian Updike.
Here.
Mr. Parker.
Here.
You're a short timer, I take it.
Yeah.
Good wishes, best wishes for your next adventure. Mark Wasdall for Justin Price. Good afternoon, Mark. Okay. There's Sean Martin. Sean, we'll mark you as present, sir. Adoption of the agenda. Commissioners, any changes, comments to the adoption of the agenda?
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is adopted. And at this time, Commissioners, let us welcome our newest Commissioner, Tom Leclerc. Mr. Leclerc, as it is our custom here, we let you do your self-introduction and making comments to explain who you are, why you're here. And
All right, very good.
thank you, sir.
Lived in Meridian about 18 years. I was on the Parks Commission for 5 years, Ada County Planning and Zoning Commission for 8 years. This whole time I've worked for CenturyLink, and it's kind of the overview. I'm interested in planning as it relates to transportation, and had some experience with that. I look forward to helping the commission do a great job.
If I recall right, you have quite a bit of background on transportation.
Yes. Well, yes. And I worked for a U.S. Senator for a while and worked on the ICE-T bill for Senator Steve Sims. He was ranking member of the Senate committee at that time.
Very good.
So it kind of gave me a foundation for transportation issues.
Well, we look forward
Yeah.
to your participation, and Commissioners, let us make sure that Mr. Leclerc feels welcome here.
Thanks.
Item 3, all right, approval of the minutes. Mr. Lewis, I didn't see any changes. How'd your eyes come out?
They're great. I didn't see anything either. So I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good job, Mr. Lewis. The item 4, approval of the minutes are approved. Mr. Hood, I will sign those. Old business item 5A, transportation project updates. Mr. Hood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. On page 11 of your packet is, and maybe before I jump into that, I did receive at least one comment, and I saw several of you still printing the packet out, so I will continue to make the PDF version of that. Doesn't seem like the hyperlinks you guys are too fond of, so I'll go ahead and do it both ways. I'll put the hyperlink online version of it, but I'll also attach the PDF version going forward. Go back to that. So page 11 of 43 is the August Transportation Projects update. As is typical, I'm not going to read this to you or even touch on all the projects listed there, but in bold are new information over since last month. So I'm just going to call a couple of them to your attention, and then at the end, again, I can stand for any questions or discuss any of the projects either on this list or maybe there's something not on this list that you've seen walking, driving about in the community, and you want to talk about. So maybe even just on the first page there are a couple of pretty high-profile projects that are on the 90-day bid list. Meridian, Charity Ustick, and Linder Franklin to Pine. So that's good news there. Not a whole lot of updates on the Linder Road projects. There's the 2 miles basically that are under construction south of Chinden. I've highlighted the construction updates there. 10 miles also on the 90-day bid list. The section there, Ustick to McMillan. Let's see, if there's anything else I wanted to highlight for you. Did talk to Mr. Wasdall earlier this month. We'll do the State Highway 69 Cunit to Meridian traffic study. You probably saw that on your agenda. He'll provide that update during the October meeting. So we'll get a little more information on that here in 60 days or so. And really not a whole lot. We are in construction season. There is chip sealing still going on out there in the community, and several roadway projects that are under construction, and scooters are out there. So I haven't seen too terribly many people riding them, but they are deployed in the community. So bird scooters are out there. Yeah, I'm not going to belabor it. So unless there's anything you want to talk about, that is the information in the packet, and I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hood's comment? Hearing none. Mr. Hood, I noticed that Mr. Bernard has appeared, and Mr. Kavanagh. Okay. Transportation projects 5A, moving on to 5B, air compression brake ordinance update. Mr. Hood.
Mr. Chair, I didn't put this in just with the regular transportation projects update. I thought this warranted a separate agenda item, but just wanted to circle back with you all. Late last year, the commission did have a discussion on air brakes, compression brake, Jake brakes, and so I just wanted to let you know that on August 13th, so that's next Tuesday, an ordinance has been drafted, and we're asking the council to consider that. So you have that on page 20 and 21, mainly on page 20 is the meat of that ordinance. It'll be in Title 7 of Meridian City Code if adopted. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, just 2 subsections there. So exempting emergency vehicles from that, but basically prohibiting the use of compression brakes within the city unless necessary to prevent an accident. So pretty straightforward. This was again discussed with the council after your recommendation last year, and our legal staff has since done some research and drafted that sample ordinance. So I just want to circle back, and if you have any comment, feedback, you're certainly welcome to attend next Tuesday, or you can provide me any comments. I'll be there as well, and I can pass those forward too if need be. So again, just circling back, and would stand for any questions or comments you have on that item.
Comments, questions for Mr. Hood, commissioners? Mr. Hood, this talks about air compression brakes. Is that a defined term in the code?
Mr. Chair, that's a good question. I'm not sure if we define it in city code. I know, again, some research was done. I can certainly ask that question. I don't know, Ms. Kane is here, by the way, for Mr. Baird this week. I don't know if she worked on this. I think it was Mr. Baird that actually worked on a majority of this ordinance, so she may or may not be familiar. Not to put her on the spot, but maybe she knows the answer to that.
Get you to comment?
You're off right now. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Mr. President, members of the commission, it looks like in the Idaho code, that term is not defined, and it is not defined in city code. So that is certainly an improvement that we can make to this draft. The city's this is actually largely done by we have a summer intern. So this is the template that was used was some other local jurisdictions, but I don't know if maybe we could borrow their definition as well. So we can we can make that change. That's a good comment.
Ms. Kane, if I may. So, as I understand, an air compression brake, it's like on a motorcycle where all the compression is released from the engine, as opposed to the old standard Jake brake. The exhaust is kept from being released, and so the engine is working against the exhaust. And I think that that's a different type of compression brake. And then there's also some compression brakes in the drive lines themselves. I didn't take it further than that, but and I understand that there are differences between the compression brakes, and some in and of themselves do no longer make noise or much noise at all. I was just kind of curious if that was a defined term.
Mr. President, members of the commission, again, that term is not, and I truly know, I just learned from what you said. I don't know, and I wouldn't be able to distinguish. So we can make that distinction and focus the definition on the one that makes noise. As I understand it, that was really the intent of the ordinance. So we can kind of define that and refine it to be focused on the noisy kind.
And this is an ordinance enforceable within the city limits of Meridian, I take it?
Mr. President, members of the commission, certainly it's tricky to enforce because really if someone needs to use whatever brakes they have, we want that to happen. I know it's federally regulated, and they do have some guidelines when they have to use them based on the circumstances of what's going on. So again, I'm not an expert in that either, but to answer your question, yes, it is enforceable, though I'm not sure that we're going to be ticketing people for using their brakes. They're typically not doing it to be annoying. They're doing it to stop the vehicle. So I think it's certainly going to generate some conversation with the police and maybe the trucks that are going through the city and kind of educate more than issue tickets. So the enforcement, I would think, is going to be focused a lot on education, certainly at first.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. Appreciate it. Anything else for Ms. Kane? Mr. Parker?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just wondering if we could include language excluding transit buses. So, like the kneeling, that's a compression. I don't know if that's going to be
Help us out a little more on that, Mr. Parker.
Our buses are equipped with compression brakes.
Right?
They don't use them all that often, but, and then when they kneel the bus to lower it,
Oh, I see.
they
What,
release the compression on the engine to drop or
Okay.
engage.
Ms. Kane, is there a comment period, or is this at the time of the hearing on the 13th?
Mr. President, members of the commission, the plan is to bring this forward to City Council as a discussion item. And really, the focus is going to be whether they wish to regulate this at all. So I can bring to the council or refine this draft so that they have something that's more workable and incorporate the comments that are provided here today. So there is, what happens after that is really up to City Council, but typically there is first, second, and third reading. Some of those can be waived. There's not always a public hearing process on ordinances that are more housekeeping or that they're just not controversial, but I don't know if this is one that council may be interested in soliciting public input. So it's really up to City Council.
Would it be appropriate for Mr. Parker to submit any comments to you?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the commission, to the city clerk.
All right.
the city clerk would take any comments and forward those to city council. But I'd be happy to add these changes to the draft ordinance that does reach city council, because this is really just an early draft for your review. So we still have time to incorporate those changes.
Wasn't volunteering you for homework, Mr. Parker, but gave you an avenue to submit some information. Mr. Kavanaugh, did you have a comment, sir?
Thank you, President Ballard, members of the commission. Just to the question about a public hearing, I think our council has shown fairly traditionally over the past couple of years that any new issue that kind of comes before us, whether it requires a public hearing or not, the council's been pretty committed into inviting the public into conversation on that. And so I'll be happy to recommend that after the conversation, if there's a desire from the council to move forward with a first, second, third reading, that we incorporate at least that first reading with a public hearing as well.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, air compression brake ordinance update, item 5B. Anything else before I close that item? Okay, moving on. 6A, Meridian Police Department update. Sergeant Arnold is not here. He's on vacation.
Mr. Chair, just real quick before we move on. So I just put it on the agenda knowing that he wasn't going to be here. He actually told us that last month, but just kept it on the agenda so I don't get out of the habit. And I wasn't sure if Sergeant Frazier was going to join us or not. So I have not talked with him yet. Hope to carry on the tradition of having, he will be our point of contact, but having this monthly police department update. So again, hopefully there's a little bit of a handoff from Sergeant Arnold to Sergeant Frazier, and I can be part of that and again continue that relationship here going forward. So just quick, again, next month or certainly for October, hoping that there is a new police department representative here.
Excellent, okay. 6B, rail with trail alignment and city pathway network. Kim Warren, Mike Borton. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of the commission. My name is Mike Barton. I'm the park superintendent for the city of Meridian, and my role is really project management, building parks and doing projects, and pathways is generally falls under Kim Warren's area of expertise, but Kim Warren is out sick today, so I'm going to come in off the bench, and I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you, and hopefully I can give you the information that you desire. Couple of things. I wanted to start out with an update on our pathways master plan and the recent amendment that we did and the process that we went through. This is an amendment that was, we looked at some key areas of focus and growth within the city, in that these areas are rapidly changing, and we thought it was a good time to take a hard look at what the pedestrian component looks like in these areas. So staff put together a list of really 6 or 7 with the rail with trails focus areas. And we developed some scenarios in where pathways would best serve these areas. We took these to our Parks and Recreation Commission, and we had a workshop. And then we kind of looked at each one of these areas with a microscope to see, generally speaking, they follow the canals and creeks, but within each one of these areas, there are other segments that could provide that connectivity that we desire. So we went to our Parks and Recreation Commission, we gathered their feedback, we took good notes, we came back with some map amendments, and we came back to our Parks and Rec Commission, we talked to them about these map amendments and kind of got their, everybody agreed. It's like, yeah, that's what we talked about, good job. And then we took that forward to the city council And we had this actually, those amendments adopted. And we can just briefly, without going into the nuts and bolts of each one, this is the kind of work that we did. This is Northwest Meridian around a future park that would be coming to the city. This future park is going to touch the Boise River on the South Channel. It would be on the south side of the South Channel. So we wanted to make sure that we had connectivity in this area and how that relates to North Meridian in general. And if you have any questions along the way, please stop me and I'll do my best to answer those questions. We looked at the Owyhee High School area. We know
Barton?
yes, sir.
Excuse me, apologize. You say touches the Boise River. What's the jurisdiction of
Yes,
your
great
park?
question.
Are you within the city limits, or are you also to Boise River?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah, so the city of Meridian's area of impact actually touches the Boise River. It touches the South Channel on the south side. So it's not, I mean, it's in the county now, but it's in the area of impact and it will be annexed. And, you know, we need to provide that connectivity to North Meridian. And also we're looking, and we've been in conversation with the city of Eagle to make sure that we can connect to Eagle Island State Park. And also, as Linder Road widens, Linder Road is being studied right now, and I don't know what program year it's in. It's a ways out there, but Linder Road is going to go to 5 lanes. So we want to make sure that our pathway connects across Linder Road, whether it's, our preference would be to go under Linder Road. We'd probably go over the top and then go under, or we'd cross. Yeah, we'd go over the top and then we'd circle back around and go under Linder Road and connect into Eagle Island State Park. Because once we get to Eagle Island State Park, then you can go all the way to Lucky Peak and eventually to Star and on. So that's kind of that's out there on the horizon. So yes, great question. It does. We will have a park on the Boise River.
Thank you, sir.
Owyhee High School area, we know that that's rapidly changing, and this area we looked at, we wanted to make sure that we have connectivity. We're also looking at State Highway 16, which is in the planning scope right now. We want to make sure that there's a couple of key connections there, 5 Mile Creek Pathway, and I think it's the other lateral that's, we want to make sure that, especially 5 Mile Creek, that because the high school is going to serve some neighborhoods that are to the east of Highway 16, we want to make sure that there's pedestrian connectivity over to the high school. So we looked at that. I think we have that pretty well nailed down. We looked at the 10-mile area specific plan in I-84. We made some adjustments to that plan. And we can get you a copy of this PowerPoint too, that you could drill down a little deeper into some of these areas. The YMCA, the Hillside Park in South Meridian, there's a future school site to the north of Amity that we want to make sure that we get connected into that hill with the YMCA, Hillsdale Elementary and Hillsdale Park, and then on up and across Lake Hazel over to Discovery Park. We wanted to make sure that those connections were adequate and going forward. And part of these plans is that a lot of our pathways are built by the development community. So if we have a good, accurate map, we can require those pathways be built in the right spot during the development process. So these map amendments are vital in getting, we don't want one to be on the north side of something when we really need it on the south, and we also want to plan for some of these roadway crossings. And so this work is tedious, but it's extremely important going forward. The other one we looked at is Segment D in 5 Mile Creek, and that's the one that's going to cross underneath Highway 16 and connect into the Owyhee High School area. That is 5 Mile Creek. will be the longest section of pathway within the city that is going to be city maintained. A lot of the pathways that we have that are behind HOA fences and they're along the canals and creeks, those are maintained by HOAs. Those are not city pathways, even though we require those. But the 5 Mile Creek pathway will go from Owyhee High School area down past the wastewater treatment plant, Rita Husky Park, down to through Bridge Tower, Tully Park, 8th Street, and on down and connect really into Pine Avenue in downtown. And there's quite a bit of that has been built right now. There's a couple of key connections that haven't, and we're working really hard to get those projects done. Within that area, one of the key connections is James Court that we're working on. There's a sidewalk connection there, but we're trying to widen that sidewalk to 10 feet so it matches the rest of the pathway network. Once that's, some of these with widening or encroaching into people's property and requesting easements and right-of-way from private property owners is very tedious for pathway work. It's not like the highway department that can go in and through the condemnation process acquire right-of-way. We can go in and we can ask and we can offer compensation for that property, but if you have an unwilling owner, there isn't anything we can do. So our approach has been to reach out to individual property owners and negotiate in good faith and offer them compensation similar to what the highway district does for right-of-way. But quite honestly, a lot of times the conversations move very, very slowly because there's no incentive for them. A lot of people just don't want extra people behind their fence or in front of their house. So we have had a lot of success, and at the same time, there are a lot of challenges with that. But we keep working hard and we keep moving forward, and we're going to get there with some of these. So one of the other areas we wanted to look at is Settlers Park and how that connects back into Sawtooth Middle School. There was a couple missing segments in there. There's a couple of segments that require on-street connections that we want to coordinate with ACHD and make sure that that gets into the master street map. So if there's some additional striping or sharrows or bike lanes moving forward, that we have that in place as well. So we have the Railway Trail West, and I'm going to go into the Railway Trail in a little bit more detail here in a minute. Mid, and then east. And we made a couple adjustments to those maps as well. So out of all that, like I said, this is a lot to look at. We developed 2 amended maps that have been adopted, and there's one, and we split it up north and south. This one depicts the pathway network as amended on the north side, and then this is on the south side. So as you can see, we have a very robust pathway network that as the city builds out and fully developed, it's going to be really cool. There's about 80 miles of 10-foot wide multi-use pathway that people can get around on foot or bikes, and you can connect neighborhoods or you can connect parts of the city, and hopefully there's opportunities for commuting out of your car. Fully built out, it's going to be very, very robust. And the good thing is most of the burden of the maintenance and the replacement, the life cycle replacement costs of some of this is not it will not fall under the city's responsibility. It'll be the homeowners associations and their individual segments and their responsibility to maintain. So we feel that's a good way to do it. The people that benefit most are the neighborhoods that live directly behind these pathways. So it's their responsibility to maintain them. So I'm going to pause right there before I go into the Railworth Trail and ask if there's any questions.
Mr. McKinney?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barton, if we could go back to the slide on the Owyhee High School area. This is an area that I've talked with the Comprehensive Plan Committee and others about looking at this area. It's, you can see it's mostly undeveloped, and that development that is shown is just getting started. I think that's the Gander Creek subdivision there, adjacent to McMillan. One thing that this area offers an opportunity is for the city to have, something that's sort of planned a little better from the get-go to create a walkable community with potentially a commercial center at the intersection of Star Road and McMillan, rather than the typical sort of, car-centric community with strip malls that are far separated from suburban areas. And one thing that we could do in this area, and this is my preference and my suggestion, but if in this area we could have a much more extensive bicycle and pedestrian pathway network, it could really be something very outstanding for our city. I like the way that we have a good starting point here. I look at this and I think, why couldn't we simply plan on something, 4 times more extensive, and as developers develop this area, that simply gets worked into the development, and we can produce a portion of the city that, unlike all the other portions of the city, is actually walkable to a much more extensively than the sort of traditional suburban neighborhood type arrangement that we have throughout the rest of the city. In any case, that's sort of my take on this area and the opportunity that we have. And it's certainly something I'd like to suggest, and I've suggested it to the Comprehensive Plan Committee and to others, but I'd like to add that suggestion to you for your consideration at least, because with this area being largely undeveloped, there's a huge opportunity to make some improvements over what's typical.
That's great comments. Appreciate it. And I think that this map was amended this year and adopted this year, and it's our goal to look at it every year and keep it relevant. And when the comprehensive plan is finalized and it comes out, and then if there are some of those commercial centers or recreation centers or whatever it is, if we're missing a connection, and in this particular case, it looks like we can get up to the corner there without a lot of effort, we could bring a multi-use path into a commercial zone like that. I think it's absolutely, it's a great feedback. Thank you.
Well, and especially with the high school, and I believe the plan is also to put another elementary school in this same general vicinity. With schools, if you had a commercial center and schools and then suburban neighborhoods, it would be an ideal location to allow for much greater use of pedestrian and bicycle pathways.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to the railroad.
Railroad Trail? Caleb? Okay. So I'd like to talk a minute about our Railroad Trail pathway, and this is along 9 Mile Creek, which is really right across the street to the west. There's a picture of it back there. You can see the tire tracks that the irrigation district uses some of the pathway alignment as their service road. And so the original project scope, and the reason this is a kind of a necessary preamble, is that we've changed the scope a little bit. I think we've improved upon that scope. And this would be to construct a segment of the Railroad Trail along 9 Mile Creek, of the picture that we just looked at, between 3rd Street and 8th Street, if you can orientate where that is. The original project was going to run from Broadway down 3rd, connect onto 9 Mile and go to the west, and then go back out to Broadway, and then continue on to the west. So you can kind of see that alignment right there, where the red lines would be on street, and then the area in green would follow the tiled. There's 2 irrigation facilities there. So the irrigation district has 2 different types of facilities. There's live water and there's drains. And the 9 Mile Creek is a drain. And then there's also live water there. So you can kind of pick up two different blue lines. So the one live water, if you put a multi-use pathway along what they're considering live water, even though it may be 2 feet deep and 2 feet wide, it has to be piped, or it has to be fenced. And the fence needs to be outside of their maintenance road. So you can't, at that point, it's not feasible to put a pathway on the maintenance road because it's fenced off. So those get piped. And this one here would be piped. So that's generally the alignment of the original project. Some of the background is that we did apply for some federal aid to construct the pathway. We do have a state and local agreement that kind of define the terms of some of that as far as match goes. And so right now, only local money has been spent. Right now, we're not obligated to use any federal funds. We can change the scope. We can do some work, some right-of-way acquisition, some preliminary design work right now. And that's what we're doing. So at the point in time and we just had a meeting last week with Tony and Amanda from LTAC, which is Local Highway Transportation Technical Assistance Council. So they manage some of these projects and they help guide us through the federal process. So right now, this project is there's kind of a 5-year work plan for some of this federal assistance, and then it goes into what's called project development, and that's pushed out into a year that's currently unfunded. So that's where the Railroad Trail stands right now, is it's currently in that project development fund, which is farther than 5 years out. The reason for some of that is that you can't go anywhere with a trail until you have an easement or right-of-way. And some of the right-of-way acquisition and getting easements takes years and years sometimes to get. We'll go into a little bit of detail about one that we've been actively working on, and we've been actively working on this one for, I think, 1.5 years. And I'll kind of explain some of the challenges with that. So that's the one that the 4th bullet, still working on the easement to secure the pathway access to 3rd Street. So this is kind of the some of the easement strategy. We had there's a property owner at the end of 3rd Street that we approached to for an easement, and they said no. And then we approached them to buy an easement, and they said no. And then we approached them to buy right-of-way, and they said no. And so no is no. They didn't want people near it. So, and that's the at the end of 3rd Street. So what we came up with is that parcel was number 3 So we purchased the entire piece of property at the end of Third Street. And what we're trying to work on right now is we're trying to work on either a land swap or trade easement, where the before configuration is so parcel 1 and 2 are owned by Friends of Children and Families, which is a Head Start program. That's a HUD-funded program. And then we own number 3, so the final configuration, 1 and 2 would be the HUD property, and then 3 would be the trail. And then after that, we kind of have the green light because the rest of it's irrigation district property, and we can go from 3rd Street down to 8th Street, no problem. All we have to do is tile, navigate some of the federal process, initiate a project. But once we have this kind of the green light and the permission slip to get across these properties, the rest of it's pretty easy. So right now, we've been working with the Friends of Children and Families. They love the idea because they will have access onto 3rd Street for some of their buses. They could create a pull-through. They talked about using that property as maintenance. I mean, right now, the back of it, they have fenced off. So it's a win-win. They would get what is desirable for them. We would get the property for the trail. Life's great. Some of the challenges, and I'm not exactly sure on, let me go back again and talk about that. So because it's a HUD property, there is the approval for any land trade needs to go through HUD, which is extremely slow. HUD had it on in their queue of things to look at for 7 or 8 months, and they came back and they determined that because the property has a bond on it, that the bank would need to approve it first. So everything is right now been sent to the bank for approval, and then it'll go back to HUD. But in reality, by the time that whole process works or goes through, the bond is paid off in 2.5 years now. So all this might be, they might own their own destiny at that point. So those are just some of the challenges that we have with acquiring easements where you don't have, where condemnation is not a tool that you have at your disposal. So we're working hard on this, it's going to happen. It just takes time. So in the meantime, what we've done is we said, hey, instead of connecting it to Broadway, why don't we look at connecting Meridian Road to Linder Road along the rail right-of-way, outside of the right-of-way, but at least along the tracks, and at least you could get from Meridian Road to Linder Road, because there are on-street connections on 3rd and along the way. So really our next area of focus is going to be easement or right-of-way acquisition along the remaining path there. So you see that number 1 is outside the fence is owned by the irrigation district. So we have a master agreement. We can do that project right away. There's an assisted living. That's number 2. Number 3 has already been built. That's in place. Number 4 is an apartment complex that would serve, actually the irrigation district drives across their grass and then on into their parking lot and across. So in exchange for an easement, we would offer to pave some of their grass, because right now there's just muddy ruts from the irrigation district trucks. So a lot of this from Linder Road backwards to the original project is very doable. And by the time all these pieces and parts fit together, this will fall into place as well. So it's our goal to go from Meridian Road to Linder Road, connect along the rail corridor. It'd be outside of their right-of-way, but nonetheless follow that corridor. So in doing that, so we're reducing the scope of the improvements on Third Street and Broadway. On Third Street, to get a 10-foot multi-use path on Third Street, we'd have to do utility relocation, and we'd put curb, gutter, and sidewalk in. So then at that point, then you have drainage issues, and so taking those resources and putting those into a longer pathway to us seems to make sense. So that is what we're working on right now, and I will stand for questions.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so the pathway on the Linder end coming back in towards 8th Street, so you say that's running along the tracks but outside the railroad's easement? Is that right up to the fence then on those people that are, where's that property at?
Yeah, great question, Mr. President. Tracy, yeah, it is, so the irrigation district has about a 25-foot easement in there
To the north side of the tracks?
on the, I believe it's 50 feet, so from the center line of 9 Mile, it's 25 feet to the fence.
Okay.
So the path would not be right next to the fence, it would be close, it would be maybe 10 feet away. There's some buffer there. So you don't have people, you wouldn't be kind of shoehorned in there, if you will. There's enough breathing room for it to be comfortable.
And would that be on would that be on the north side of the tracks then?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I have property that backs right up to the railroad tracks at Northwest 13th, almost to Linder Road.
Are you on the,
But I'm on the south side of the tracks,
oh, okay, yeah. that's
probably
not-
across from
that is-
2.
That is, yeah, that is not you then.
No, I'm on the other side. I was just
Right.
curious.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're across from the assisted living? Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I can see the tracks and I can see it on the north side.
yeah, so I did a little bit of work in trying to get a hold of the assisted living, and on the Secretary of State's website, they list an attorney's office that is the owner, and I called the attorney's office, and they said, yeah, we do work for them, but I can't tell you who they are. So those are some of the challenges we have with some of this. But we're, like I said, we're working hard. We're going to get them. It's just a matter of time. And yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments for Mr. Barton?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. McKinney.
Back to that map would be helpful. I'm just wondering, is it the intent to complete this all together, all at the same time, or to do it in little bits? I mean, you mentioned that it looks like the path there by parcel number 3, or area number 3, is already completed. Would it be the intent of the Parks Department to complete this path in segments as they can, or to kind of line up all the dominoes and then build it all at once?
Yeah, great question. So number 3, Whistle Stop subdivision that multi-use path was required as part of the development of that. It's a townhomes or an apartment complex back there. So they paid for that. The rest of these properties are not likely to redevelop anytime in a long, long time. So that's why that one is disconnected and the rest of them. So it's our goal to do the whole thing at one time. We don't want to do a short, we don't want to send people down a dead end or dump them out onto unimproved property, because there's issues with that if you have people with mobility problems, or you really don't have permission to push people onto other people's property. So we want to get all the permission first and then do the whole thing at once.
All right, okay. Great, thank you.
Any other comments, questions for Mr. Barton? Mr. Barton, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And as always, you have
Appreciate you guys.
outstanding, or ongoing invitation to return and discuss
Okay.
other projects with us, sir.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir. 6B. 6C, Regional Transportation Improvement Plan Update, Ms. Tisdale. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. President, members of the commission. Thank you for having me today. Today, I'd like to provide some information about the draft 2020 to 2026 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, also known as the TIP. This is our 7-year budget, and it is made up of projects that are funded with federal funds, state funds, and also local funds or developer funded if it's considered regionally significant. It doesn't really matter where the funds come from. If it's regionally significant, it still has to be in our program. So today we will talk a little bit about the resource development program through Compass, the extended horizon of the TIP, the couple of project lists and the way we look at projects, performance measures, and also public comment that's coming up. So our resource development program is the first step. We start with this, starting with our members' needs and plans, and as well as how it fits within the local regional long-range transportation plan, Communities in Motion. I know that you've heard a little bit about that and our recent approval, as well as the update that's coming up. All the applications are added to our resource development plan, and then those top-ranked projects are either funded through our federal programs or local programs, and then anything not funded stays on that unfunded list, and Compass staff continues to look for funding for those projects. We have an extended horizon this year. Historically, the TIP was a 5-year document, but we also had projects that were beyond those first 5 years in preliminary development or PD. And for several years, the Idaho Transportation Department has had a 7-year program for their statewide program. And so this year we made the leap to change the name of our program as well. And so where we know a project year, we're including it. But there will still be some projects that are preliminary development where we don't really know what that construction year might be yet. So we'll go through some of the details on how we look at projects. We have a detailed project list, which has, you can tell, a whole lot of information. A lot of this is required. A lot of it just helps people go through the projects. Provides a key number is what I usually refer to, but it's also got a title. It makes it easier to search for projects if you know the key number or a keyword in the title. It's got how much funding has been obligated to this project in the past, so it gives you a total cost of the project. Because this program is only for 5 years, there could have been funds spent on it earlier in the years previous to this program. It has a description, and it also has all the phasing of the projects, as well as how the funds are broken out between federal and local if it's a federal aid project. So we also have a basic project list. People see things in different ways, and so the other way that we look at this is through a basic project. It's easier to search through for projects here, but you're just not going to get all the details with this list. And then we have a major changes list. This includes the projects that were added or removed, or if construction was advanced or delayed, or if it has a significant scope change. So if you already know what has been in our program for the last couple of years, this is the easiest place to go to see what the changes are. This is just going to give you the major differences between last year's program and this year's program. We have an interactive map. So if you go online, you can see where the mappable type projects are. We have a lot of projects that are either studies or public transportation. A lot of them are not really kind of mappable, and so you won't find those on the map, but if you click on one of the segments, the details pop up. That'll at least give you the key number, and then you can find even more information later, but this gives you the general details about the project. So what is in the interest of City of Meridian? These are the projects I picked out for you that you are mainly concerned with. The biggest one as far as dollar amount and impact is going to be US 2026. From Star to State Highway 55, we expect that whole segment to be completed by 2021. So lots of construction in that area. I won't go through all of these right now, but I can stop for any questions if there are any. let me, since Mike was here talking about Railwood Trail, we do have that one advanced to 2022 for construction. We're still working with the city. It was requested to advance it, but with all of this new talk of the extension even further, we're still determining if that's going to be plausible at this point. So right now, we're thinking it's going to be in 2022, but it could delay again. So we also have performance measures. We have two different sets of performance measures. These are called TIP achievements. So what we're trying to do here is show how we are achieving the goals and targets from Communities in Motion and federal government with the projects that are included in the TIP. This first set ties directly with Communities in Motion 2040 2.0. Those are set by our members and our board members, and that includes the City of Meridian. They were involved in setting these goals. Many projects have elements of multiple TIP achievement categories, but you can see with the projects in the TIP, we are making progress towards this. The examples I am about to show you are based on the current TIP. We haven't done all of this analysis for the update yet, but this shows you that we are making progress in these projects that we're having towards our goals. We also have federal performance measures, and these are the newest performance measures for the TIP. We've been planning for a long time, but we haven't really been telling the whole story, and so we're trying to tell more about what's actually happening with the projects that are in the TIP and how successful we are with this program. So the new approach is called performance-based planning and programming, or budgeting, and this is a federal approach nationwide. It's new for the entire nation. We're all looking at ways to tell our story better. Compass started reporting the federal performance measures last fall, and several of them were just added. So as the last couple of years, these federal guidelines have been rolling in on how we are to report. So today we're going to introduce you to this process and how we are making progress. I'm saying process instead of progress. We are making progress in this overall process with our TIP targets. So we'll go through each of these, but first I want to show you how we are showing these in the Transportation Improvement Program in the detail list. You'll see the icons there for the federal performance measures, and the Compass performance measures are listed out for each project. And not every project will have a federal performance measure, and you'll catch on to that in just a little bit. So these, again, are examples from the current TIP, as we're still working on the analysis for the update. So for the safety-related projects, we can refer to national studies that provide information about a certain type of improvement to a project and what those outcomes have been nationally. And so we can predict, if you will, how many crashes this type of improvement will save. And for all the safety projects in our current TIP, we project that 994 crashes will be saved. And from that, we can anticipate that we would be saving lives and serious injuries by building these projects. The transportation or transit asset management puts a score to the viability of every asset used in the public transportation system. These are all the existing capital assets, such as buses, bus stops, equipment, those sorts of things. And the process itself uncovered a lot of needs that were not expected at the beginning of the process. So the overall process, just doing this, has really pointed out additional needs to move forward with our public transportation system. So currently, over the next 6 years, it's anticipated a $35 million need for public transportation assets. That is partially funded. So we anticipate without additional funding, we would have a $17 million deferred maintenance in public transportation assets. So we are looking for different ways to get money. Valley Regional Transit, Compass recently applied for a federal grant, and we found out last Friday it was awarded. So we're already making steps towards meeting some of those needs. 100% of the bridges that are in poor condition are funded in this TIP. We have 3 bridges that are in poor condition. All of them have a bridge replacement, and several that are in fair condition also have rehabilitation projects. And then we have congestion mitigation air quality. This is currently no target for the Idaho Transportation Department, as ITD does not use this type of funding, and so they have opted to use this as a 0 target. And then these go into a little bit more detail. Pavement condition on the National Highway System, showing here as green as good, yellow fair, and red as poor. For the Treasure Valley, we're at 98% good and fair pavement condition on the National Highway System, and that is the interstate, most state roads, and some of the local roads that are considered regionally significant. So we are making progress there. You can see some of the red areas that we have on here. Most of those major red areas already have a project programmed, so we are making progress there. And then level of travel time reliability. This target is also looking at the National Highway System, and it's not quite as intuitive as you might think. The travel time isn't necessarily making travel time shorter, but it is making it more consistent so that you know when you leave your house it's going to take 20 minutes to get there. Not one day it's going to take 5 and the next day it's going to take 20. And so that's what this measure is trying to tell us. And by running the model through our entire system, by building the projects on the National Highway System, the congested vehicle miles of travel decreases by 1.7 million over the entire system, even with the growth that we anticipate in the Treasure Valley by 2040. So these big projects are showing to make a really big difference. And then truck travel time reliability is only on the interstate. This is very similar to the last one, the travel time reliability, but it's looking at how trucks get through the region. And again, only on the interstate. And so we are in compliance with level of travel time reliability, but the Treasure Valley is actually not meeting the targets of truck travel time. You can see there's several red and yellow areas there. The good thing about this one, through the analysis, we found out that the interstate project in Nampa is actually going to eliminate entirely the congestion on that segment of the interstate. And so we still will have some segments that aren't going to be performing well, but the Nampa to Caldwell section should be completely eliminated of congestion. So in summary, our staff is working on methods to report more analysis about the various reporting methods, and we're going to be working on how to tell our story better and how to make our system safer and better in the future. So we do have a public comment period coming up August 7th through September 5th. Next week on Tuesday, the 13th, is our open house at the Compass offices. So we hope that you might stop by and we'll cover all of these projects or any that you have questions about in more detail. And I'll be sending emails to Caleb. He can forward those on to you with all the details on how to get to the map and all of these documents that I've talked about today. So I will stand for any questions.
Commissioners, comments, questions for Ms. Tisdale? You wowed us.
Okay, if I could just learn how to say progress, right? Well, thank you, and I hope to see y'all next Tuesday. And I've got a couple of handouts for you that will give you that information as well as an award nomination form that's coming up.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ms. Tisdale. Appreciate it.
I can start with
Okay, item 6C. Moving on to D, ACHD initial draft of 2020 through 2024 integrated five-year plan. Mr. Hood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So on page 26 in your packet is the cover memo for the integrated five-year work plan that's currently out on the streets and ready for public consumption and comment. ACHD Commission did release that here last month for, again, public review. This is kind of the, every year at the beginning, near around the beginning of the calendar year, we start the process of coming up with our priority lists and sending them to ACHD. So they're have reviewed our list that we sent that to them in the spring, and this is their draft plan, which is the first two years of their budget is aligned with this integrated 5-year work plan. So the information you have in your packet is a summary of the changes from what's currently adopted in the integrated 5-year work plan. I mentioned that I was going to bring to this meeting copies of all of the projects in the integrated 5-year work plan, and I did, although I didn't want to burn 10 copies because it's 40 pages long. So I did make 5 copies, so I'm hoping you can share and that's enough, but if not, I can go run another 1 or 2. Or someone can have my copy if you'd like. But what I'm going to hand out, again, is everything in the county that's in here. So it has bridge projects, it has intersections, it has roads, it has community programs, it's got everything. It's got pavement maintenance and those types of things. So it is comprehensive that way. I've starred the projects that are in Meridian, just so you can kind of quickly flip to it. If you want, really, page 8, 8 to 14 is your roadways and intersections. So again, those are going to be probably most applicable or important, pages 8 through 14, and then pages 24 through 34. So those are the community programs projects. So those are the 2 lists we usually put together: roadways and intersections and community programs. And again, so 8 through 14 and 24 through 34, excuse me. But I think really what I'd like to do is run through what I kind of attached in your packet, because that's the changes year over. So what you have in the packet I just handed out is, again, the full program, and if I don't call attention to that project, it is what it was the year before, and it's on track. But what you have in your packet is new information, it's changes. So just real quickly, let me run through that with you, and then we can see if you have any comments. I'll be doing the same kind of presentation with council next Tuesday. Pretty regularly, the mayor has directed me to send a letter to ACHD, essentially thanking them for considering our comments. Sometimes we have some requests, hey, you're proposing to delay this project, can you keep it on track? But if you see anything like that, any messaging that you want me to take forward to the city council next week to then forward on to ACHD as we have reviewed and comment on the program, I would appreciate that. So, completed projects in 2019. So this list that I'm going to run through, it usually starts with good news to bad news. So this is the good news. We did your project in 2019, so it's coming out of the program because it's done now. We really only had a couple of those. One was a bridge, Victory Road Bridge, a quarter mile east of Locust Grove, and Linda Road, Saguaro Canyon pedestrian crossing. So those are the ones that'll come out of the program because they're complete, that were in Meridian. Again, pretty good news. Here's some new projects that are being added into the program, and we have a handful of them. 10 Mile and Victory, including the 10 Mile Road Bridge. It'll be done as part of that intersection project. Victory Road and Locust Grove Road roundabout with the bridge, so that'll be part of that intersection project as part of the bridge program there. Community program projects, Broadway Avenue, West 8th to 4th. So that's one here in our downtown, so that's doesn't have a funding year for construction. It's in the future, but at least it's being added into the program there. 2.5 Street, Carlton to Fairview, same story. It's getting into the program, although not with a funded year. Locust Grove and Woodbridge Drive. So I'm on page 29 now. Locust Grove, Woodbridge, Ped Crossing. This is entering the program with a construction year of 2024. So this is one we've talked about near the police department there, water tower, and some pedestrian crossing kind of south of Locust Grove, between Locust Grove and Bentley, Cadillac Drive, Icon, that area.
Mr. Hood,
Mr. Chair.
is that to cross Locust Grove?
Correct, Mr. Chair. This would be a crossing across Locust Grove, east to west, that would connect. I can go to the arrow if you'd like, but Woodbridge Drive is a T intersection into Locust Grove. It doesn't align with Water Tower or anything else. Danik Gymnastics is in the general vicinity, but there's no road that goes through. So it'd be a crossing somewhere. It may come in actually as Water Tower extended or Woodbridge extended or something in between or just a little bit offset. But the idea is to connect Woodbridge and some of the, Story Park and some of the things that are a little bit further down Water Tower to the neighborhood there in Woodbridge and that whole section. This would connect that section. So yeah, essentially in between the interstate and Franklin.
And would that be a lighted crossing?
Correct. Right now, it hasn't been scoped, I don't believe. Well, it's been scoped or it wouldn't be in here, but it hasn't been fully designed, but it would be a pedestrian actuated signal. So it's probably something similar to a Hawk signal because it is a 5-lane facility out there in that section.
That's, my comment there is Locust Grove at that point is 40, 45 miles an hour, and pedestrians will stop that traffic. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's what that would be the intent of this project, yes. That if someone is trying to cross there, they wouldn't have to go all the way down to Locust Grove and cross, and this gives them that opportunity to
Okay.
cross the road there. Linda Road, Overland to Franklin. This one, I can envision us thanking ACHD for including it in the program. Again, no funding year, but I really do appreciate the comment, and I think the mayor and council will too, to start the discussion with ITD on the Linda Road overpass. So this is that section, that mile basically that goes over I-84. So we can begin talking about how to make that project happen. Advanced project. So again, we're still doing good at advancing. That sounds nice. Cherry Lane Meridian pedestrian crossing. So this is one that the school district has been requesting for some time, and it's advancing 1 year from 2021 to 2020. So this again is between Linder and 8th Street. Those are both signalized crossings. This would be a mid-block crossing between Meridian Middle and Cherry Lane Library. Moving on then to page 30, Eagle Road, Lake Hazel to Amity. So this mile segment was in an unfunded year, and it's moving up to 2023 in the program. So advancing quite a bit there with all the development that's happening out there. Fairview, Locust Grove, that intersection is advancing 1 year from 2023 to 2022. Lake Hazel, Eagle to Cloverdale. So again, same area we were just in with Eagle, Lake Hazel to Amity, advancing from unfunded or a future year to 2024. 10 Mile and Amity intersection from 2022 to 2021. And then the Chinden corridor, which Ms. Tisdale mentioned previously, and a lot of that work happening. This is ACHD's portion of widening of Chinden is to do that intersection, Chinden and Locust Grove in 2020, coordinated with the state's project there. And then Victory, Locust Grove, that roundabout advancing 1 year from 2022 to 2021. So those are the advanced projects. So again, everything thus far has been pretty good stuff. You want to have projects in these categories. Moving to delayed projects then. And we're in pretty good shape here, although there are two that are looking both to delay 1 year from 2021 to 2022. And it's back-to-back segments, or excuse me, it's the 10 Mile Victory to Overland and the 10 Mile Victory Road intersection. So that segment of 10 Mile Road is looking to be delayed 1 year in the draft program. But relatively speaking, that isn't too terribly bad to have one and a half, two projects that are delayed and then removed. The one project in Meridian that's on the removed list is Locust Grove, Fairview to Eustic. So this one, I think the discussion is going to revolve around the number of lanes. So this segment, if you go north of Fairview, is northbound is 3 lanes, two northbound lanes, excuse me, up into almost Chateau, and then there's a drop lane that happens right there. The city has been looking at potentially having this segment be a 5-lane facility in the past. I believe it's in the CIP as a 3-lane roadway. There's some neighborhoods that are real close there, so if you widened it to 5, you'd be essentially in people's backyards and certainly lose a significant portion, if not all, of the landscape buffers that are there, and people are living along a 5-lane roadway. So I think a lot of this conversation is going to be, how do we balance the need for an alternate, if you will, to Eagle Road, because that's really a lot of what Locust Grove is serving as. As Eagle becomes so congested, people are using Locust Grove to get north-south, versus the existing neighborhood feel that's there, and maybe making this a bicycle more bike-friendly, leaving it a 3-lane roadway, adding a center turn lane so you can add some capacity improvements to it, but rather than widening it out to 5 lanes. So it says they're going to coordinate with us on the scope, but that's been something that we've been talking about for years now, and I guess we'll see where those discussions go. But that one is being removed from the 5-year work plan at this point. So that's a summary of the changes, right? And then again, you have the list of everything that's in there. So if I didn't read it off, it's probably good news because it's still moving forward in the program. But there's several projects that are in there. Just Locust Grove Fairview, that intersection is in the plan, so it's still, I believe that's next year, 2021, I think is where it's at now. But anyway, so there's several City of Meridian projects that are in the full 39, 40-page handout that I gave you, and certainly we can talk about any of those if you'd like, but I think it's easiest just to talk about the changes and probably direct most of our comments that way, but it's all on the table. So kind of teed it up there, so if there's anything you all want to talk about, comment on, I'll stand at the ready to jot down some notes or answer questions.
Mr. Lewis?
No, I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
I had one question.
Mr. Hall?
When it says program balancing, what does that mean? I mean, exactly, is it just there's too much out there to do and they need to push it out? Is that essentially what that means? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the 5-year work plan has to be, I mean, it's fiscally constrained. So it has to be a budget and they have to show revenue to pay for the project. So that's essentially what that means. It's not a high enough priority. They ran out of money to program it. So it doesn't mean it can't come back sometime, but for right now, it is constrained to the dollars they envision it taking in.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hopkins?
Hey, Caleb, have you heard anything about Amazon? Is that going to free up and go forward, or what's the gig on that? Do you know anything on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hopkins, I do know, but if I tell you, I'd have to kill you.
Perfect.
No, honestly, I haven't heard anything different than what's been in the media the last few months. I did hear that I don't know if you saw that story or not, that it did change ownership. I don't know what that means, if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I haven't had any conversations with them. That project is in Canyon County.
Yeah.
So I have talked to the city of Nampa a little bit, but again, that's been months ago, so I really don't have an update to share.
All right, thanks.
Any other comments, questions?
I will just say, as you're, we're kind of wrapping this item up, you can go to their website. I think I put a link there if you go to the online version, and you can get all this information and more, and it's broken down by different programs too. I think I provided you all the relevant information, but if you want to read more about them, get project descriptions that are a little more detailed, you can get that all on the website as well.
Mr. Litter, are you asking for additional comments, or?
So, Mr. Chair, only if you have them. I don't necessarily need any feedback. Like I said, I plan on sharing this information with the council next week, and if there's a finer point, I can share your concern about the speed limit on Locust Grove and putting a pedestrian signal, there and stopping traffic that's going 40, 45, even 50 miles an hour. I know the police department's right there, so probably not too many people that are bold enough to go 10 over or 5 over even near a police station. But no, I don't need anything, but if you have anything you'd like me to carry forward, I certainly can.
Very good. Does that close our item 6D then? Moving on to staff communications.
So, Mr. Chair, just to, again, kind of highlight some of these things, there's actually quite a few in this month in staff communications. The first one is a follow-up to last month and our police department, when they did some of their canvassing of a couple of crosswalks in town. So the village, they mentioned a couple of crossings near the village off of Records and Main King here downtown. Mr. Martin did some talking with some of his coworkers, and in fact, there is that project is already in their hopper, if you will. It isn't in the program, what we just talked about just now with the integrated 5-year work plan. But you can see from Ryan Head, it's on the fringes of coming into the program. So they don't have the money now, but they're tracking it. And I mean, there's one that we could potentially comment on the 5-year work plan, right? We'd like to see this improvements of this pedestrian crossing be made, because that one isn't in the program now. Just a little bit of context, it is number 29 on our priority list this last year for community programs projects. I had it called Main and Williams, which is the next block down, which I think is where historically kind of some of the crossing happened, but I will change that for next year. So it's Main and King. It was the 29th highest priority for the city in our community programs project this last year. But anyways, just wanted to kind of circle back a little bit on that. And I do have that as a future meeting topic too. So if we get more information on that, we can share that. But right now, I don't know that it's going to be anytime soon. Again, they're kind of, it's on their radar. They're tracking it. Just hasn't scored high enough to warrant funding at this point in time anyways. And then I'll let you read the next couple pages for yourself if you'd like, more Paramount information there. But beginning on the bottom of page 38, let's see which one is this. Oh, this is to circle back on outside of Rocky Mountain and the Linder Cayuse Creek. So you can see some of that email exchange between myself and Mr. Martin and their evaluation there of moving that flasher and maybe some of the unintended consequences of moving that school zone south of the existing signal at Cayuse Creek. So that one. And then finally, Mr. Lancaster, bless his heart, even though he couldn't be here, still wants you all to discuss one additional topic, and that is a potential hands-free device that our police department brought up to the city council here a couple of weeks ago. So I did reach out to the chief of police. He is willing to come and discuss this with you all if you'd like to have him. So I thought if you wouldn't mind having that conversation, if this is something you think, to me, I mean, it's somewhat transportation related. So if that's something that you all want to hear about and potentially chime into the city council on, you certainly have that ability. There's a little bit of background information if you haven't heard, but just a hands-free ordinance. The city is considering that. I don't know, kind of similar to the air brakes, compression brakes. I don't know where that's going to go either with the council, but at least it's being talked about. So if you wanted to weigh in on that, again, the chief or his designee is willing to come to probably your October meeting, since September will be a mobile meeting, but to explain that to you and have a discussion with you. And yeah, so that offer is out there. I will just also be honest with you, October may be too late. I don't know how long police is going to, how much time what their timeline is for addressing this with the council. So not that I don't think if you're interested that it wouldn't be a good conversation, but it may be too late if you want to have an influence on the council that way. So anyways, I'll put that out there, but let me know if you think that's something that you all would like for a future meeting topic. And that transitions into future meeting topics unless there's any comment on those communications.
Mr. Hood, if I may, on the Paramount School, I was reading through that. What's the Cliff Notes version of that discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, Cliff Notes would be nice on this one because this has been several years now in the discussions. And we have made some progress and there's been some improvements out there, but there still is a behavioral issue with high school kids. No offense, but imagine that, right?
What's new?
So, you know, they're part of the community and there's a high school there, and some of the people that live right south of the school still have some concerns with trash and trespassing. And the parents parking, although they're not technically parking because they're idling, they're staying in their vehicle and picking the kids up there, it still creates some concern for those neighbors. So, again, some progress has been made, but maybe not as much progress as some of those property owners in that neighborhood would like to have to see. So some of the things that are being explored are, again, changes potentially to city ordinances that would prohibit standing in your vehicle in that location. So you can't just idle or sit. Just because you're in your vehicle doesn't, you're still parked, but by our definition, you're not parked, right? So there's some talk about that. And this kind of ties in with what the school zone committee's been talking about, improvements, making the school parking lot more friendly so that students don't feel like they have to park in the neighborhood. They feel like they can get into and out of the school parking lot more efficiently. So yeah, there's some things we're still working on. And again, don't be surprised if it doesn't come back up on your agenda here sometime in the future, but that's about as short as I can make that report because
Well,
there's a lot going on.
I was trying to sort that out, and I appreciate the cliff notes. Any other items? Mr. Lewis, the handhelds device, anything to be said there?
I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hopkins?
I don't know why it seems weird that the state does not take that issue up and make it uniform across the state instead of, I got to know if I can have a phone in Sun Valley, but I can't have a phone in, you know what I mean? It just would seem like it would cure a multitude of problems if the state would step in and either take it up and make a change on the whole state rather than individual cities as you go along to figure out whether they've got an ordinance banning handheld or cell phones in my hand or not. So I don't know why the state doesn't take that up.
I think that was the legislation last session.
And they killed it in Senate.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So we are 6E. Any other comments? Excuse me? Oh, Ms. Kavanagh, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Apologies to Caleb, I probably should have sent this as an agenda item. I wanted to update you all to a conversation that occurred at the council because I think there might be an opportunity for a commission member to participate in a task force. Over the past number of months, City Council has looked at a wide variety of updates and changes to our UDC. And one item that has come up repeatedly in conversation amongst the council relates to parking in our driveways. So currently, under Meridian Code, if you have a recreation vehicle, a trailer, RZR, those types of things, they can't be parked in your driveway. They can be parked on public streets for up to 3 days under ACHD, but they can't be parked in your driveway. They have to be parked, I believe, behind your side yard with a 6-foot screening fence. I'd heard from some constituents who were confused by you telling me that I can't park my property on my property, I can park it on the public street for a number of days, and felt it was somewhat confusing. So the city council, we discussed a couple of weeks ago, putting together a small task force to see if there is any changes or modifications to that current code. And names that had been suggested were, representative of a homeowners association, representative obviously from our legal department, perhaps a retailer of a recreation vehicle or something along those lines. But it was also suggested that maybe a member of this commission would want to participate in that. Time will be very, very short. I think we're going to have one meeting towards the end of August, beginning of September, to say what, if any, changes this group would suggest that would then come back for city council for future inclusion. So just wanted to put it on your radar, and if there's one or a number of you that would want to participate, connect with Caleb or myself, and we can get you additional details.
Very good. So you're asking for a volunteer?
A volunteer, Mr. Chairman, yes, if a volunteer's willing and able, we're not volunteering anyone they need to participate. We just wanted to make sure that that invitation was extended should someone want to participate.
That would be at the end of August versus?
Towards the end of August, or beginning of September, yes, sir.
Okay. I'm out of country first part of September, so.
Fair enough, Mr. Chairman, fair enough. And again, if someone is
It's
interested,
an
we
interesting topic. You ought to invite an appraiser too, to get some input on how that affects properties.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a great idea. We will look to see if we can invite an appraiser as well. As Mr. Chairman, as you know, typically when it comes to land use decisions, city council doesn't take property value impact into our decision-making process. So that wasn't something that I had contemplated or that the council had contemplated. But in light of, I think, your comments, it wouldn't hurt to have somebody with that expertise involved in the conversation.
Very good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Future meeting topics, and as we have in the past, executive privilege. Is there anything else that we need to discuss that has come to mind? Okay. Future meeting topics, the main King Crosswalk, we just talked about that in the future planning there. Bus tour in September. Is that still on, Mr. Hood?
So, yeah, Mr. Chair, I was hoping maybe that Mr. Parker, as one of his last duties here as an ex officio member, could maybe give us a little details about what we can maybe expect next month, or if I can expect an email in the next couple of weeks that I can share or whatever.
Yeah, I can definitely set something up for you guys. I would like some feedback on how rigorous of an adventure you'd like. We can have you just ride a bus and probably shuttle you back, or we can have you do something along the lines of a scavenger hunt where you're gonna have to maybe like ride a bus, make a transfer, pick up some groceries, something like that. Like live like you actually need to use the bus for your everyday life.
Interesting concept, Mr. Parker. Like I said, I'm out of country, so whatever happens on the 9th, I'll have to read the notes.
Okay.
Okay.
For right now, Mr. Chair, just let's plan on meeting at City Hall at our normal time. Is that around 3:30, maybe a couple minutes early, 3:15 or so, but I'll send some more information here in the coming weeks. Certainly that's fast approaching, so when I'll coordinate a little bit more with Stephen Hunt there and give you some more details. But
Mr. McKinney?
So will our September meeting then, as far as transacting business in this way, be superseded? The bus tour will take the place of this?
correct, Mr. Chair, Commissioner McKinney, we typically will meet here, call roll, maybe approve the minutes, and then, proceed on, but like 5-minute type of a convene the meeting and then adjourn. We do have to accommodate the public, so if there's someone from the public that wants to join us, it's still an open meeting, so we'll make those accommodations. But yeah, we'll plan on a meeting here, and we really won't have much discussion topics or new business items. It will be, mainly old business and again, the tour.
Okay. Bus tour, we got that covered. State Highway 69 traffic study in October. Comprehensive plan update. Fixed route transit is still on our agenda. Any new ideas come to mind? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I didn't hear anybody pick up the hands-free. Is that correct? We're not
Do you want to hear
overly interested in having that?
police chief on the hands-free?
I think so, because
Okay.
well, personally, I'm astounded that the legislature hasn't passed that. But, and again,
I'm glad I asked because I didn't hear anybody say, let's talk about that. So I'll invite him then and we'll, okay, thank you.
all right. Next meeting date, September 9th. I will give the gavel to Mr. McKinney. I'm on vacation and my wife gave me an airline ticket to go to Germany.
She going with you?
Yes, we're going to visit my son. or our son, excuse me, our son. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Parker, you're off to the wilds of Montana, I take it? Did I read that right?
Yep, that's correct, Kalispell.
Okay. And you're doing what up there?
Be running a community land trust, working on affordable housing.
Very good. We wish you the best in your new endeavors. And thanks for being a member here. Anything else? Mr. Lewis, you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We'll see you next month. I will see you in October. Thank you.